Hello, everybody. This is Megan,
And this is Alana.
and welcome to Tea Time Crimes.
I love how you do the nod right when it gets to one, like ready.
I do? I didn't
you
realize.
do. It's great. I feel like we're in a production studio.
I didn't realize I nodded us in. I'm so focused on that one. I don't want to give it the millennial pause that I just jump right
know.
in.
Got trashed for that.
Yeah, so much. So what's new? What's going on? How are you?
Good. We saw Indiana Jones, which is fun.
Don't yell at me. Like the old one? Is there a new one?
There's a new one.
Okay. Sorry. Is your
It's okay.
boyfriend not in this one?
Oh, he is.
Is he still your celebrity crush?
Always.
Alana has a thing for 1970s Harrison Ford.
Oh boy.
Is it
Who doesn't?
1970s or
Yeah.
1980s?
I mean both.
Yeah. I guess current day Harrison Ford as well.
He's just got it. He's just
Yeah.
got it.
I'm more of a John Goodman girl myself.
Come on down, girl. He's here.
love a John Goodman. All right. Well, how was it? Did you like the movie?
It was good. It was missing a little bit of like oomph, but
Oomph.
it was still, I don't know, like a little something, but it was still really enjoyable. Like it had the classic indie formula, so it was fun.
Dare you rate it?
Oh, I liked it.
But can we give it a thumbs up?
Um,
No?
an adventurous thumbs up.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just want you to know that my son, who's never listened to this podcast, by the way,
Shocking.
obviously, when he's trying new food, he is now has his own rating system, and he told me on his own. He said, "Mommy, this is a thumbs up means it's good. Thumbs down means it's bad, and a sideways thumb means it's
That's
okay."
mine.
I know.
Oh my God, I didn't even tell
good.
him this.
I know. I said, "Good Lord, how are you?"
You
Maybe
must have
she
good
is.
teachers.
She is your mother.
Yeah,
It's
I
happened.
mean, I am his other parent.
Yeah, you're his stepmom, either through your marriage to Brad, which he talks about a lot,
or being next
just
to you
yeah,
for your pregnancy.
by osmosis.
8 hours a day.
So, all right, you got a tea for us today?
I do. I had trouble selecting one today because, I still have plenty of good choices left before I need to refresh my stocks. But I really wanted a black tea because I didn't get a nice full cup of tea this morning, but we're going with a white tea.
What's a white tea?
A white tea it's much more delicate, much less caffeine. So it's picked fresher, like before it gets too mature. Like I guess it's like veal.
Okay, I was gonna say it's weird. The veal of tea is what I'm envisioning. Gross.
Essentially.
Gross. So it does have a little caffeine in it.
It does have a little tiny bit, but it's not gonna do much. I'll get some tea later today. I got a group thing. Let's see here.
Thanks for that detail. I've got a group thing, so
I got a group thing, so I'm gonna be in a cafe. All right. Today we've got Fairie Tea.
Ooh.
It's an organic color changing loose leaf tea. So remember, back in whatever episode, we had the butterfly tea, which was beautiful but lacked substance.
Butterfly
kind of like
pea?
Barbie.
It was called
Butterfly pea tea.
Kind of like Barbie. Did you make a pop culture reference?
I did.
Apparently not the new movie. Okay, we haven't seen it yet.
The movie's gonna take that down.
No.
So yeah, it's a white tea with rose, chamomile, apple, mint, butterfly flower, elderberries, and blue cornflower. A lot going on. I took a picture of the actual loose leaf mix because it's really pretty, and I'll post that in one of our stories. But so far, it smells very minty. I don't know how I'm going to like this. I almost wish I would have chilled it.
All that stuff sounds like it'd be good in a black tea too.
So immediately it smells to me like a Celestial Seasonings peppermint tea.
Okay. With a teddy bear on it? Oh, that's sleepy time tea. Yep.
That's sleepy time,
Mm-hmm.
which is also awesome.
Yeah.
It's very warm. No body at all. Like almost it takes away from my body. It has negative body.
What does that mean? It's deconstructing your molecules?
Yeah, like soul. It's stealing a little bit of my soul.
Wow. That seems harsh.
I don't know if it's a bad thing though. I might have too much soul.
Okay.
I got soul. Okay.
Is that a song you just made up?
But I'm not a soldier.
Oh, okay. Nope. Didn't know if this was a
is that?
Pennsylvania song in action.
Mary Kate did follow up with me, and she's the one who made that song up.
I'm sorry,
And
Mary
then
Kate.
I started singing it too much.
Mary Kate is the musician. If you didn't listen to our Christmas
correct.
episode,
Go listen to it. It's a good one.
she's a professional harp player.
Yeah, and if you're in New York and you want to book her, just look up Mary Kate Boylan New York harp, and I'm sure you'll find her thing.
You just listed so many facts. Just look up Mary Kate Boylan harp, New York, girl, music, Philadelphia songwriter, and she should come up.
She's gonna pee.
Google's really good these days.
Stop. Wow, that's a nice glass you have. Is it crystal?
Perfect segue for an audio podcast. I'm just drinking water out of a glass. Finish your tea, crazy.
So yeah, unfortunately, while the color is interesting, it just tastes like mint, but it's just like a little bit of like a put it on your tongue for a second and then it disappears and then I'm left with hot water.
Like those Listerine strips that they used to have?
Yes. I thought about that yesterday. How weird.
Weird. What color is it?
It's like when you eat too many blueberries.
I'm sorry? So it's the color of your bowel movement?
If you eat too many blueberries.
After you spent the weekend in Maine?
Yeah. Blueberry
Right.
picking.
Perfect. Can't wait for this rating.
Oh boy. Let's call it a minty soul-sucking thumbs down.
Ooh, God. Thumbs down. And soul-sucking.
It's just because, like, if it lingered a little bit, yeah, but it's like it doesn't want to hang out.
It doesn't like you.
It doesn't. And I even steeped it for that decent time we were warming up. Not warming up. Testing.
La 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 la.
Me.
You put in all this love and attention to it, and it just ghosted
it spurned
you.
Me.
It ghosted you.
It did. Did you see that movie? I just saw that movie, by the way.
That's a movie
on Apple TV with Ana de Armas and Chris. One of them, Evans.
Love Chris.
It was okay.
What's it called? I don't know what you're even saying.
Ghosted.
Oh, well, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
Thanks for tying it back. All right. Well, a minty, soul-sucking thumbs down. Apologies.
I'm sorry. But I do appreciate the creativity of this tea maker.
What if you had a tummy ache?
It would be good for that.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's a use.
Ready for today?
I'm ready for today.
It's a real whodunit.
Oh.
So November 20th, 1901.
Okay. Get down with that.
Nell Cropsey. I really struggle with her name. Nell Cropsey. There it is. And her boyfriend of 3 years, Jim Wilcox. Standing outside the cold North Carolina night. They've been fighting for weeks, and Jim has had enough. He returns a picture to Nell and tells her that they are through.
Oh.
She covers her face to hide her tears and yells at him to leave. As Jim walks away, he hears Nell's sobs. He never sees her alive again. No one does, at least that they're willing to admit.
Whoa.
So, the couple had met in 1898, and Nell, whose real name is Ella Maud Cropsey, but she goes by Nell, they'd moved to Elizabeth City, North Carolina from Brooklyn. her whole family had moved. And so Elizabeth City is in northeast North Carolina. At the time, it had a population of a few thousand, and it's about 50 miles from Nag's Head, which is the Outer Banks, just to give you a reference. So Nell's parents, William and Mary, have 9 children. Nell was born
Whoa.
July of 1881, although most places will say that she was born in 1882 because she often lied about her age. William was a farmer in New York, which seems insane, but he was. And in 1898, he answers an ad from a man, John Fearing II, and he moves.
Fearing.
And he moves to North
Whoa.
Carolina to rent land from Fearing. And because in North Carolina, it's believed he'll have the ability to have multiple crops a year because of the weather, as well
Oh,
as
cool.
incredibly cheap labor. So he thinks that he can make more money. So farmers like William Cropsey, God, that's the name, William Cropsey, were told things like, you just have to scratch the land and it will flourish, right? You barely have
What?
to do anything. You just have to
Oh.
dig a little dirt, done, right? So it sounds amazing. Now, it's hard to dissect the exaggerations from the facts, but Nell was constantly described as a great beauty, which
Oh.
then wrongfully assumes elegance and manners go right along with it. But it's hard to know the truth now because chances are the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So after the tragedy, often a victim's life is either villainized or
Yes.
immortalized, right? They're
Mhm.
either all good or all bad. And so after the tragedy of Nell's disappearance, it became that she was all good. But historians believe that she was probably about 5'3", average appearance. She had a few missing teeth in the back, some gold fillings, and she's probably not the angel that was described
Interesting.
by the newspapers, but she probably was just a human being rather than perfection.
Yeah.
She did little things like, for instance, she would lie about her age. Like I mentioned, she told Jim that she was 16 when they met, but she was actually 17.
Okay.
I don't know why, but big whoop. And at the time, Nella is one of 9. So she has several sisters who are all about the same age when you're doing the most important thing you can in your life, looking for a husband,
Yep.
right? Trying to get that goal. But in addition to looking for a husband as she's moving to Elizabeth City, she also loved to dance, play instruments. She loved to read. So Nell is a more complex human being than just this perfect virgin
Yes.
angel that had something happen to
Yeah.
her, or this mean, conniving person who caused these issues, right? There's this middle ground that we need to try to honor a little bit.
Also, the whole like virginity equals good person thing.
Yes.
I'm just like, I don't even like the word anymore. Like, what is that?
You're
What is
about
the
you're
thing?
about to hate
It.
30
Oh
minutes
God.
in. Yeah. So she starts courting Jim Wilcox as soon as the family moves to town. Now, Jim was born in August of 1876, and his parents had been married for 3 years before they had Jim, and they're well known around the city. His father, Thomas Poole Wilcox, was a farmer and a very vocal Republican. He was also the sheriff. Now, this is a time when it's after the Civil War.
Mm,
The South is going through some serious changes, and a
yeah.
Republican is somebody who is a party at that time who's fighting for an equal society. Many people in the South are looking down on the Wilcox for their political beliefs.
Hmm.
Just how it is.
Yeah. Lincoln was a Republican.
Right. So the family's growing, right? Jim's mother, Maddie, gives birth to 4 children: Addie, Jim, Sadie, and Annie. But Addie will die at the age of 11, which makes Jim suddenly the oldest and the
Oh,
big brother of his 2 little
wow.
sisters. Now, Jim grew up with a kind of a rough childhood. He was taunted for being a Republican, a very well-known Republican family.
Yeah.
But he also was really short. So he was said to be about 5'2", which at the time, the average height in North America was 5'5". So it's maybe not as short as we would think today, but it's still
Isn't that
considerably shorter.
crazy
I
how
know.
much, like, at least for the US, like, our height has grown? It's insane.
It's so weird. Yeah, even when I was in Vermont, not too long ago, I was in this old farmhouse that was built in the late 1700s, and the door handles were so low for me because people were so much shorter. I mean, for me,
It's
I was like, "Where's the door
crazy.
handle?" It was, a foot lower than what we would see
Wow.
now.
That's just
Yeah.
wild.
So Jim is ridiculed and called names like Stump and Shorty.
Wow.
and just picked on in general. And he it seems he would create this kind of steely demeanor because of it, like a really tough skin.
Yep.
But he's mechanically gifted, and he leaves Elizabeth City to go to Raleigh, and he attends the North Carolina College of Agriculture and Mechanic Arts. But
Oh.
he attends for 1 year before he returns home. So,
Oh.
yeah. While Jim's father, Thomas, is the sheriff, he's constantly getting opposition from the Democratic Party. He is elected in 1888, and he won by so much that then allegations of voter fraud are running all over. It's crazy how much history repeats itself. There's voter fraud
Wow.
everywhere. It must not have been a fair election. Again, 2 years later, he wins, but only by a small margin. So the Democratic Party is becoming more popular. But the city is growing. So people are moving to the area because of the great agricultural promise. And
Yep.
so people like Nell's family moving to Elizabeth City is pretty common, and it's starting to grow. The railroad is also expanding. So through Jim's lifetime, when he was born, the nearest railroad was 100 miles away. But as he's growing up, it comes right into Elizabeth City, which
Cool.
changes things dramatically. You also have, throughout Jim and Nell's lifetime, you've got electricity, you've got phones. They're not everywhere. They're not widespread.
The turn of the century.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the Cropseys moving to Elizabeth City is not unusual. And when they arrive in 1898, that's the same time that Jim's father stops being sheriff. Some sources say he resigned, others say he was voted out, and a Democrat takes the office. Now, after this, Jim's father opens up a store, but it's not doing great. So the Wilcox are struggling a little bit, and this is when Sadie and Jim go to work. I don't know if that had something to do with Jim only attending 1 year, but Sadie and Jim start working to help the family, and Jim gets a job on working on the railroad. I hate to say that because now I know what you're going to do.
I've been working on the railroad. There you go.
Beautiful.
Oh boy, that's going to be in my head forever now. Thanks.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't even write the words. It was driving me nuts. There are rumors once Nell moves to Elizabeth City and after her disappearance that she was involved with John Fearing II, the man whose land they are working.
That name.
And they are also living in his home to start, her whole family.
No, this never ends well.
Now, Fearing is a married man who's 20 years older than Nell. And there are the rumors circulating basically fall into two camps. You have a question before I continue?
I have two statements.
Oh boy.
One, I think he's a vampire, and two, I think his lineage comes from that castle where the female vampire that we covered was.
Bathory?
Yeah.
Care to explain?
No, it's just a feeling. I mean, with the name Fearing. Come on.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm sure historians will be wondering if you're available for research assistance. The two schools of thought on the relationship between Nell and Fearing are one, that Nell flirts constantly with John, and John remains devoted to his wife. And together, John and his wife pray that Nell will leave. Just sounds ridiculous. The other story is that John was a well-known womanizer, and him and Nell were together like a man and a woman. But
Womanizer.
in ways that preserve her virginity. TMI. I don't know what that means.
Don't say that. Preserve.
Well, ugh. I know. Also, I have questions, but anyway, whichever one is true.
That's for a different kind of podcast. You'll find in late night.
I can't hang. Whichever one's true, historians speculate that Jim could have possibly been a ploy for Nell and used to either make Fearing jealous or to divert questions.
Interesting.
So that people would think she was with Jim and they wouldn't ask questions about her running off to be with Fearing.
The vampire.
Yeah.
Yep.
But remember the time period that we are in. So Jim and Nell are courting, which usually means you're just sitting in the front parlor talking.
Right.
It's so different than what we would expect.
If you touch hands, whoa.
I know. It's not like they're living together. It's not like they're engaged. He visits her house and usually she has 8 siblings. So usually other people are in the room.
Right. Her family will be in the room. We'll have some tea and cookies.
Right. But interestingly enough, for some reason, and this is just a gasp by the neighbors, Nell's father allows her to go out on public outings with Jim without a chaperone,
Whoa.
which is, I know, big deal. But
He must really want to marry her off.
he'll take her to plays or, fairs or whatever, but it has been known to be just the two of them. Often, though, her sisters will go or cousins or whatever. But anyway, it was a big to-do. So it's not until June of 1901 that Nell and her family move out of the Fearing home. They've been there that whole time. And then they move into their own house in town that's called Seven Pines.
Oh, that's nice.
The whole time Jim's been courting Nell, he appears quite serious about her. He seems to really care about her. He will often buy her expensive gifts. He visits at least 3 times a week. Like I said, he takes her to shows, dances. He'll even buy her tickets to things while he's working just because he knows she'll like them. So, for instance, a circus came to town and he bought her sister, and her cousin tickets, even though he couldn't go. He really seems interested in this relationship.
Yeah.
But in the fall of 1901, Nell and Jim start to fight quite a bit. It's worth noting that Nell's family are Democrats.
Okay.
While we know Jim's family are Republicans. So there's also that little bit of political tension.
Romeo and Juliet.
A little bit. This is at a time when Jim's father has been voted out. There's a sheriff who's in office who's a Democrat. Also, 1901 is the same time, that fall of 1901, President McKinley is assassinated.
Whew.
Right? Now, Nell is rumored to start giving John. Nope, it was John. Nell is rumored to start giving Jim. There's no John. Oh, John Fearing, I guess. But Jim, the cold shoulder. She basically telling him if he doesn't like the way she's acting, then he can just leave. If you don't like it, get out. But she's often snubbing him and in public. Sometimes won't even say hello to him when she's walking by.
Weird.
Yet he still keeps calling on her.
She must not really like him.
Right? So Nell's sister, her name is Olive, but they call her Ollie, will report that Jim is moody, quiet one minute and friendly the next, and quick to anger.
Uh-oh.
But reports say that this, scheme by Nell, it could also be used to make Jim propose.
Oh, some pressure.
But it seems most likely that Nell is just growing tired of Jim.
Oh, it's sad.
Yeah. By November, Nell's reported as ignoring Jim even when he's in her house. He will ask her a question and she just won't answer him.
Okay.
Or she'll turn to her sister and answer to her sister.
That's rude. Just, Jim, give up.
She stops walking him to the door. She stops answering the door for him. And she goes out of her way to flirt with other men.
All right. Signs are clear, buddy.
I know. So in an attempt to get back at Nell, when she ignores him, he starts talking to her cousin, Carrie.
Oh, boy.
So he even takes Carrie out a few times, often with Nell's other sister.
This is not the way to do it.
I know. And now Nell is getting ready in the end of November. She's going back to New York for the holidays. And she just acts like she wants nothing to do with Jim. It really does seem like a passive-aggressive way for her to force a breakup.
Mm-hmm.
So on November 19th, a few days before Nell is set to leave, Jim comes to Seven Pines to take Carrie, that's Nell's cousin, skating. He rings the bell. Nell ignores him, won't answer the door. So Carrie gets up to let him in. Jim tries again to engage with Nell by asking her how the corn on her foot is doing. So it's not the most romantic segue, but he's like really trying to care about her. It's like, how's that corn, Nell? Which I had to look up exactly what a corn was, and it was not pleasant.
Yeah.
So when he asks her, Nell turns to Ollie, her sister, and says something like, oh, I imagine it's getting better. What? Now, on the way home, Carrie was kind of sent in, I think, to ask questions. So Carrie is asking, what's the deal between you two?
Yeah.
And he says that they're going to break up because Nell doesn't pay him any attention.
Yeah,
and
fair.
he assumes that she's just done with him. So Jim and Carrie get back to the house. Jim has stopped to buy Carrie some fruit, which she brings into the home. Nell makes a show of telling Carrie she'd love some fruit, but refuses to eat it when she realized Jim's the one who purchased it.
Oh my God, petty.
This makes Jim mad. He leaves. As he's leaving,
I hate that petty
stops
stuff.
to light a cigarette, which means he's still within earshot, and Nell grabs an apple and starts eating it, and she starts laughing about Jim. And as he's walking away, he can hear Nell say, "Why don't you just call him Squatty?" which is one of the childhood taunts.
Squatty, yeah.
And so he's pretty upset. The next day, Jim confronts Carrie, who he heard laughing with Nell about it, and Carrie apologizes. And he walks her back to Seven Pines, and Nell ignores him again. He leaves, but returns later that night around 8 p.m. Again, Nell won't let him in, so Carrie does. Jim hangs a parasol in the front hall. It had been a gift from Nell, and he's returning it. I don't know why you're giving a man a parasol in 1901, but whatever.
It's hot.
What? It's hot?
A sun parasol or a rain parasol?
I don't
in
know,
the
but
South, they have those like nice the
yeah, but I've never
ones.
seen a man carry one. Don't they have hats?
That's a good point. Maybe it's something about the early.
It's like
1900s
I never
we don't
gave
know
him
about.
I never gave him a gift except a parasol for him to hold for me.
Yeah.
I think might be what we're getting at. He hangs the parasol up and he gets into the room. Carrie is there, Nell is there, as well as Ollie, her sister, and Ollie's gentleman caller, Roy Crawford. Again, Nell ignores him. Yet Jim just sits there. He's sullen, he's sad, and he's trying to make
Just
small talk with the other people.
give it up.
They talk about things in town like an upcoming wedding, and they also talk about near-death experiences, which leads them to the topic of suicide. And Jim shares with the group that he almost drowned once, and he said it was quite pleasant before he was rescued, and if he had to pick a method, that's what he would select.
Whoa.
At this, Nell chimes in. She would prefer to freeze to death because drowning would mess up her curls. Okay. All right.
Wow.
Around 11, Jim decides to leave and he asks to speak to Nell privately in the hall that leads out onto the porch.
Okay.
Now, this is where Jim says he returns the picture that Nell had given him and lets her know that he's already hung the parasol up.
Yeah.
And that they're through. Surprisingly, Nell bursts into tears.
What? Girl, you caused this.
I know. So Jim tells her, I'm sorry, but we're through and you should go back inside because she was not dressed appropriately for the weather. First off, she doesn't have shoes on. She's got like a rubber slipper because of that corn.
Oh.
And like not proper shoes. And then she just has a light sweater on. So he tells her several times to go inside because it's too cold. She yells at him just to leave. So he turns and leaves. And that's the last time he sees Nell Cropsey.
Okay.
Now, Ollie and Roy are still inside. So around 11:30, Ollie is politely like, "Hey, Roy, you should leave. It's 11:30. Why are these people staying up so late?" I thought when, like, at this time when there's not electricity, people are going to bed with the sun.
With the sun.
What's happening? Do these people nap? How do they? Because they get up early.
Maybe the gentry, they just stay up late.
I don't know.
The farmers
Anyway.
will go to bed with the sun.
Well, they're farmers.
It's so weird.
So she's like, "Roy, leave. It's getting late." And Roy kind of takes his time. He seems to be stalling a bit. He thinks that Jim is still there, and I think he was waiting to walk home with Jim.
He gone.
Ollie walks Roy out. They're expecting to still see Nell and Jim talking outside or in the front room, but they're nowhere to be found.
She isn't either?
There's no sign of Jim. There's no sign of Nell. The front door is wide open. So Ollie assumes...
She did something rash.
Ollie assumes Nell has gone to bed, and she's a little peeved because she left the door open. She left everything. You have to close up the house. So Ollie goes ahead and closes everything up, and she goes to her room. She's expecting Nell to be there. They not only share a room, but they share a bed.
Boy, yeah.
Yeah. So she gets into bed, and she realizes that nobody's there. But she doesn't go look for Nell.
Why?
She assumes Nell is somewhere with Jim, she'll later say, which seems a little odd considering that she knows she wasn't dressed to be anywhere.
Yeah.
She has that weird rubber shoe on. I think she also had curlers still in her hair. Like they're not going out. You know what I mean? So Ollie falls asleep waiting for her sister to return. But she's awoken by the sound of the dog barking around 1 a.m. And then she hears her uncle scream to her father to get his gun because a thief might be after their livestock. Ollie hears all this commotion, and she yells down to her father, "Don't shoot. Nell and Jim are still out there." And she doesn't want them to get shot by mistake.
Yeah.
So hearing this, William Cropsey and his brother start looking around. There's no signs of a thief, but there's also no signs of Nell. And they realize now that Nell is missing.
Yeah.
So between 1:30 a.m. and 2 a.m., William walks to the Wilcox house and bangs on the door, waking up Jim's parents.
I mean, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, they answer. Jim's mother wakes him up and says, "Hey, when did you leave Nell?" And he apparently is a very heavy sleeper. He reminds me of Brad sleeping. He says, he kind of is groggy and says, "I left Nell on the porch crying. We broke up." Like, what? And then he goes back to sleep.
Wow.
There's no concern. So William Cropsey walks to the chief of police, and he wakes up Chief Dawson and he says, "My daughter's missing. I want you to come back to the Wilcox house with me." He agrees. They go back to the Wilcox house. This time, he's woken up by the law, and now Jim's awake. He was sleeping.
Yeah.
Now he's awake, and he's asked questions about Nell. He again answers, "What are you talking about? She was at her house. I left her at her house." And then they take him to the Cropsey house for an interrogation. Now, on the way, they're basically retracing his steps to go back to where he'd last seen Nell. And on the way, he points out a spot where he actually spoke to a man named Leonard Owens. He said, "I left Nell. I met Leonard Owens here. We passed each other. We stopped and talked for a few minutes.
Uh-oh.
And then I went home."
Who's Leonard?
So he's back at the Cropsey house. Think about how weird that is, because either Jim's done something terrible to Nell and her whole family has to look at him, or he's innocent and her whole family is staring at him thinking he did it. Ugh. There's a reason why you keep things separate now. The next day, Jim Wilcox is arrested for the disappearance of Nell Cropsey. But there's not enough evidence to hold him, so Jim is released, but he has to report to the courthouse every day at noon.
Jeez.
Can't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. But the town is already forming an opinion.
Of course.
It doesn't help that the family's Republican. It also doesn't help that in 1894, Jim's uncle, who he's named after, James Stanton Wilcox, was charged for killing a man.
Oh.
His uncle claimed it was self-defense, and it came down to whether he shot the man while he was lying down or while he was standing up. So current day Jim is asked to recount his story many, many times, and every single time it's the same. He says, "I broke up with Nell. She put her head on the post of the porch and covered her face with her arms. I told her to go back in. I told her it was too cold. She told me to leave. I was urging her for several minutes to go inside, and she just told me to get out of there, so I left." And then he said, as he was walking home, he encountered that man, Leonard Owens, around 11:40-ish. The two say hello. Leonard Owens says, "Yes, I saw Jim at this time. We stopped. We spoke. Jim looked. There's nothing. He was not in any kind of emotional state.
Yeah.
His clothes weren't messy. He looked just like normal Jim Wilcox. We talked for a few minutes, and then Leonard Owens returned home as the clock was striking midnight. His wife remembers that.
Okay, so we got that.
So the family and the townspeople are searching for Nell for days. Jim does not participate in the search.
Why?
Police get help in the form of a man. This is amazing. It's not his real name, but his name is Hurricane Branch.
Yeah, it is.
I love it. He has 2 trained bloodhounds that are known for tracking. So the Cropseys give Hurricane a pair of Nell's shoes and socks, and the dogs are able to track her scent through the house and into a patch of turnips. And they stop at random spots where turnips appear to be missing, and then they track her over to the Fearing house. Now, apparently Nell
foraging
had brought Mrs. Fearing 6 large turnips the day before.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
So then the scent is tracked to the end of the pier about half a mile from the house. Now, the marine where the pier is belongs to John Fearing.
Uh-oh. You talked about drowning earlier.
But here's the thing. Nell had been there in the days before, so her family thinks it's an old trail, just like the turnip patch.
Oh.
But Hurricane notices that the dog is unable to get a scent down the stairs. He can get a scent of Nell in the house and again at the front gate, but he's unable to get a scent of her actually going from the porch to the gate. And so he starts to think that she was attacked.
Picked her up?
Attacked on the porch, picked up, brought to the gate, and then dragged to the pier. Or
oh my gosh.
picked up and then carried to a buggy. And then that pier would have been an older trail.
So, are they saying with the older trail, like, would she go there to like think at the pier, or like
It's
meet
right.
up with Dracula?
Their house is right on the water.
Okay,
It's like right
that's
across from the
nice.
water. So it wouldn't be, it's like 500 feet away. It wouldn't be weird
Okay.
that she had walked to the end of the pier
No, yeah,
to
it's a
just
nice
look.
thing to do.
But also maybe that night she was so upset that
Yeah.
she walked to the end of the pier and met with foul play or jumped into the water. Because they can't find her with the bloodhounds, they drag the river. They send in divers. No sign of
Wow.
Nell. They even
Whoa.
fire cannons into the water, which is, I think, is Huckleberry Finn.
What?
To like, it's supposed to, it doesn't work, but at the time, they thought it would make things float to the top. I know. I know. Good stuff.
Oh boy.
So people at this point strongly believe that it was death by suicide because she was so distraught over the breakup, but her family says no.
She didn't care about him.
So they start, did she run away? Was she pregnant and she's run away to give birth secretly? You know, she didn't have shoes on. Did somebody help her run away? Was she murdered? Was she attacked? All these theories are running through everybody's head. They start offering rewards, right? $200 for catching the person who did this to Nell, because the family does not believe that she did it to herself.
Yeah, that's
And
a good sum of money.
$100 for finding Nell, dead or alive.
Ugh.
They even consult with a psychic. Now, the
Okay.
psychic says that Nell is dead and that she's been stored in a well somewhere. She then leads investigators on this rambling 25-mile journey, looking through every well within, the Cropsey home, until finally the investigators are like, okay, why don't you call us when you have more specific information, because
Yeah,
this
thanks.
took all day. Thanks.
That's awful.
Meanwhile, Jim is fired from his job simply because he's believed to
part
have
of it.
been involved. So his boss fires him
That
before the
sucks.
trial even takes place.
That feels unfair.
And the town hates him, dangerously so.
It threw rocks at him.
Angry mob mentality.
Uh-oh.
Jim's father sends him to the outskirts of town to stay with family so that he's not right in town and not having to face it, so that he's safe. By December, William Cropsey has told the papers it was absolutely Jim Wilcox, and that's published. Jim responds and says, again, he said, I did not do it. I left her crying on the porch. And then everything Jim does from the moment Nell disappears is scrutinized.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Why is he not more upset? Why didn't he go looking for her? Everything.
That is a little weird, because clearly he really liked her, and like he finally did the right thing by breaking up with her. But it is weird that he didn't like pitch in or like get upset.
I thought so too. But then he says he wishes he knew where she was. He wishes he'd stayed to make sure she got back in the house. And he said he did not participate in the search because if he found her, then everyone would say he knew where to look. But he did donate to the search efforts. And I kind of see where he's coming from. I wonder if his father didn't have something to do with that as well. Like, if Jim's the person who finds her, everyone's going to say, well, yeah, obviously.
So like, if like, I don't know. I mean, there's a little selfish, but like I get it at the same time.
Jim's father, right, the former sheriff, said, quote, many people appear a damn sight more anxious to convict my son than to find the missing girl.
I mean, think
He's
about
not wrong.
Literally, the money sums is more for turning in the person than finding her, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
and
what?
Yeah, I know. I thought about that too. So December 18th, investigators get submarine lighting to help them search the river. They're still
There we go.
searching the river. Nothing comes up. December 21st, the Cropsey family receives a letter saying that Nell is in the town of Rocky Mount, North Carolina, which is about 100 miles away, and that she had come there with a man. The man had abandoned her, and she was afraid to return home for fear that she'd get in trouble.
Oh.
The letter was proven to be false, and rumors start to circulate that William Cropsey may have written it.
What? But we don't trust the rumors right now because everything's... Oh, William Cropsey.
Her father.
Her father, not his father.
So rumors start to form here. This is the first year seeing of it, that possibly
That's weird.
the Cropsey family is involved in hiding Nell for some reason.
Dracula got her pregnant.
So Christmas Eve, the Cropseys get another letter. This one says that Jim left that night. Nell heard the dog bark, encountered a pig thief, and was attacked when she disturbed the robbery. She was then taken by boat, and her body was left in the Pascatank River. And a drawing is included showing X marks the spot of Nell's body.
Creepy.
The letter ends with a promise to present Nell the following day.
What?
So 3 days later, on December 27th, 1901, Nell is discovered in the river very near where the X was drawn. She's face down. Instantly, the narrative comes together that Nell was so distraught over being dumped that she threw herself into the river.
No.
However, if this was the case, that means that Nell's body would have been in the water for 37 days.
Gross.
Her body was in unbelievable shape. She appeared just as she had in life.
No, then it's not it.
They'd also dragged that spot in the river and sent divers there several times.
So somebody dumped it.
Did shooting the cannons help? I don't know. But there's so many questions that I just don't. I did some research. I hope nobody looks at my Google history, but I saw some gross pictures of bodies that have been submerged in water after just a couple weeks.
It's terrible.
They're very disturbed.
It's so bloated.
The skin is affected immensely. So the fact that she looked just like she had just passed away, something's not adding up.
I mean, think about if you stay in the bath too long. Your little fingers.
Yeah. But I don't know enough about this to know, like, is there some weird freak thing that could happen with the water being a certain temperature, right? Could she have been stuck on something down at the bottom? I don't know. But I would think that at 37 days,
you'd be almost unrecognizable, I think. Or
I
really
think
fucked up.
Fish would have started to eat your body.
Yeah.
So the coroner, his name is Ike Fearing. He's the cousin of John.
Whoa.
Yeah. He arrives to examine the body. Now, there are several questions about Dr. Fearing's character by the reporter W.O. Saunders. He reported on a case where 3 children had been found in a river, and he ruled that it was an accidental drowning, but he did not do an autopsy. And so the actual belief was that the children were abducted and the little girl was assaulted. And Saunders writes that Fearing's actions are, quote, probably one of the most flagrant acts of official negligence and stupidity in the history of the county.
Got him. It's Dracula's brother.
But to be fair, Dr. Fearing does not perform the autopsy alone. So he's assisted by Dr. Oscar McMullen and Dr. Julian Wood, who is actually the Cropsey's family doctor. So Dr. Wood recognizes Nell and knows that it's her, identifies the body for the family. The autopsy is performed on the Cropsey's property in an outbuilding. Hundreds of people come to watch.
What? Mm-hmm. What? Never in a million. I would be so far from that. You'd find me in the next town.
With the captivation of the autopsy incorrectly being placed on the fact that they took off Nell's clothes.
Oh, wow. That's gross.
So many comments about how some of those boys had never seen a naked woman.
Oh, boy.
Fellas, go home.
That's awful.
And people also say they don't believe that she was drowned because she was found face down. But I looked it up, and that is, in fact, the most common position for a drowning victim.
Oh.
So I don't know. This must have been just an old wives' tale, I guess.
Yeah.
What's more curious is that she was in the condition she was in after 37 days, and they did not find any water in her lungs.
Okay, well, that's the definition of drowning.
She appears to have died from blunt force trauma to her left temple.
There we go.
With something like a blackjack.
How's a blackjack?
It is like a piece of metal covered in leather.
For what?
It's like a baton to hit things with.
Oh, for what? As a weapon.
Yeah. Jim Wilcox is known to own a blackjack. So I'm not sure which came first, the identification of the weapon or the fact that they knew Wilcox carried a blackjack. I imagine a lot of men carried a blackjack in those days. I mean, it could also have been a tree branch. I mean, it's just a long, thin weapon. I don't feel like they really honed in on the fact that they knew for sure it was a blackjack. It's not like there was an indentation.
Right.
But the town is very relieved to find out that Nell is still a virgin,
What?
which only intensifies their
Ugh.
anger more, which drives me absolutely nuts because
That's the value.
if she had been found to be with child or to have had sex, then they would understand a little bit why she came to this
Ugh.
violent end.
It's so gross.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this poor woman did not have a chance to develop into her own human being. And all they were concerned about, that's what I'm saying, they're pushing her into this
So
perfect,
bad.
pure angel of a person rather than just
So bad.
a 19, 20-year-old
Yep.
trying to navigate relationships. I imagine at this time too, we talk about people being a lot older than their age versus now. You know, when you're 12, you're doing a lot more things. You're getting married.
Yeah.
When you're 16, things happen younger. But at the same time, I think in the early 1900s, you're a lot more immature when it comes to dating and things like that. You don't know anything.
Yeah. Right. Because it moves so much slower.
You don't
And
know
nobody
anything about
talks about
sex.
stuff. Yeah. No, there's no sex ed.
Yeah, it's a big surprise on your wedding night.
Just like Bridgerton season 1.
Nell's not being encouraged to stand up for what she wants or date who she wants or
No, of course not.
So the way she treats Jim kind of makes sense to me. She probably treats him as she treats her brothers, right? So when her brother's doing something she doesn't like, she gives him the silent treatment or like is nasty to him. There's no chance for her to practice being in an adult relationship that's not being pushed.
That's a great point.
Jim is officially arrested once the body is found, and he has to be locked up and guarded to avoid being killed by the townspeople.
Jeez.
The mayor closes all the bars, and the current sheriff asks for naval reserves to stand guard at his cell. It's that bad. Yeah. At one point, an angry mob shows up at the Cropsey house and asks William Cropsey, the father, to lead the mob to kill Jim Wilcox.
Wow.
Mr. Cropsey says, let the law do its job.
Good.
Nell's funeral is held on December 30th. 1,500 people attend inside the church. There are more outside.
That's a lot of people.
Nell's body was then transported to New York to be buried at the same cemetery as one of her infant brothers who had passed. This is not really pertinent to the case, but sadly, the grave diggers had not dug a big enough hole. And the coffin didn't fit, so they had to pause the funeral.
That's super awkward.
While they made it bigger. Isn't that weird?
That's really awkward.
Measure twice, cut once, guys. So by March 1902, a jury is selected, and it's really hard to find a jury that's willing to listen. Most fellows are like,
right.
He did it, and I know he did it, and I don't care what you tell me. I'm going to find him guilty. So they had to go through so many men to try to find a jury. They finally select 12 people. They're mostly farmers, but there's a couple, saloon owners or lumber mill workers. All of them are men. 10 are white, 2 are black men, and the Times Mercury reports that 9 of the 12 look intelligent.
Wow.
So there's still many questions about what actually happened to Nell because her body was in such good condition. So was she put into the water at a later date?
Yes.
Where was she in the meantime if she wasn't in the water? Did she hit her head after going into the water? Because that's completely possible that if she did throw herself in the water, she would have hit her head on a rock, or as the current moved her, her head would have hit something. Or was she hit with something intentionally and that's what killed her? They also cannot say it was a blackjack. They admit that. Now, Ollie recounts her story. She says Jim and Nellie went out around 11:15, which actually I think helps Jim's timeline a little more because he said around 11.
Yeah.
It's a 10-minute walk from the Cropsey home to where he met Leonard Owens. So if he's talking to Nell at 11:15, that makes sense. They talk for a few minutes. 11:30, he starts walking. 11:40, he meets Leonard Owens. And then he's home. There's no time for him to do anything with Nell.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess if he did go out at 11, he's got maybe 20 minutes. There's also talk at the trial that Nell had mentioned suicide at another time, not just that night, but she had mentioned it before. And previously she said she would put a stone around her neck and jump in the water.
Oh my God.
So that comes up. The defense basically says all you have here is that Jim is the last person to see Nell alive. The doctors believe that she was hit, and the police believe that Jim is too apathetic. So that means he must have done it. They say we can't help that Jim's the last person to see her alive. But we can tell you that Jim loved Nell Cropsey and he very much cares.
Mm-hmm.
That he's just a stoic man. And we can tell you that Jim did not hit her. In fact, you can't prove that anyone did. The doctors can't tell after her being missing for 37 days. Jim does not take the stand, which everybody is very upset about.
Yeah.
They wanted to hear him. It was probably a smart move, though, because especially if he's, calm under pressure or more reserved, it's not going to come across.
Yep. Too cold.
So on March 22nd, Jim was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge made a comment that he was sad for this verdict. He believed Jim Wilcox was innocent.
That's crazy.
But he had to enforce the punishment, which was death by hanging, sentenced for April 25th. Jim's granted an appeal, so the death sentence is delayed. While he's waiting for that, in September of that year, a jailbreak is attempted. Somehow all the cells got unlocked. Jim refused to leave.
What?
He said, I'm good. So 5 of the 7 prisoners ran away and got out, but he said he didn't want to do that. So a second trial happens in January of 1903. This trial leads to a second-degree murder conviction and a 30-year sentence. So death penalty's off the table. He's still got to spend 30 years in prison.
But where's fearing in all this?
Jim, from the start, is a model prisoner. He works really hard, and he's described as polite, which I don't think is an adjective necessarily used that often in prison. Sadly, while he's in prison, both of his parents pass away. He's not able to see them or attend the funeral. His mother passes away in 1910, his father in 1915. About 13 years into Jim's sentence, Jim becomes very ill. He has tuberculosis, and he's told that he's going to die. So he prepares for death, and they ask him, would you like to make any deathbed confessions? And he said, yes, I would. I did not kill Nell Cropsey. I want people to know I am innocent. Jim survives his tuberculosis. He has a lingering cough for the rest of his life, but he truly thought he was going to die. So in 1917, a new governor is elected. His name is Thomas Bickett, and Jim and the warden ask the governor for a pardon. The governor looks into his case and grants it at Jim's request.
Wow.
He's released in 1918. Now, sadly, Jim has a really hard life once he's released. Nobody will give him a job. The townspeople still don't like him.
He's got to move to another state, honestly.
I know. I don't know why he won't move. He spends the rest of his life working odd jobs. He boards with a family who shows him kindness. He starts drinking very heavily.
Oh.
In 1934, Jim decides that he wants to tell his story. He says he has information that will prove he's innocent.
Why? What? Why is this coming now?
He contacts a reporter, W.O. Saunders, who was the guy I quoted earlier, and he tells him his side of the story. Saunders goes home that night and tells his family he finally knows what happened that night.
And then he's killed.
2 weeks later, Jim dies by suicide. He shoots himself with a gun.
No.
That the person he was boarding with had locked up because he was afraid Jim was suicidal, and Jim broke into the office. A few years later, the reporter dies in a car crash before ever telling anybody what Jim told him.
What did he do for those few years?
He kept it a secret.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know what he was told.
What?
Here are the rumors that have come from this case. So one is obviously Jim Wilcox did it and threw Nell in the river. That's one. That doesn't make sense to me because he met Leonard Owens at the bridge at 11:40 and he wasn't, flustered or in a hurry or... Yeah. Also, I don't believe Nell was in that water for 37 days. I can't wrap my head around that.
No, there's no way.
In 1901, the same year that Nell went missing, there was a string of unsolved burglaries. They're happening nightly, almost every single night, and the intruder seems to either watch women sleep or disturb them while they're sleeping and then runs away the second anyone wakes up.
Ew.
Yeah, so that was a possibility. Like maybe this guy encountered Nell outside and something happened. Another theory is that after Jim left, Nell ran to John Fearing, Her father catches the two of them together, attacks Fearing, but Nell steps between them and accidentally gets hit in the head.
Because they're basing it off that letter.
Nell's father and John Fearing then cover up the murder.
Mm.
Another theory is that Mr. Cropsey came out while Jim and Nell were talking and started to yell at Nell and started to get physical and told Jim to leave, and Jim left. And so Jim had seen that attack, and then Nell went missing, and that was a piece of information he knew and never told. I don't know why you wouldn't, though. A witness saw a light at Seven Pines, their house, in the attic, which was unusual. And so rumors started to circulate that Nell was being kept there, possibly that she had been accidentally struck by somebody in the Cropsey family, and they were keeping her there hoping she would recover, and she didn't.
Huh. Interesting.
That piece is interesting because one of the books I read was by historian William Dunstan. His grandfather, he grew up in that town, and his grandfather had kept this a secret because he was afraid of how the town would react, because they were ready to kill Jim Wilcox and anybody who said they thought Jim was innocent. So he didn't want his family to be in harm's way. So he kept this a secret. But he says that at that time, they had electricity in certain places of Elizabeth City, and so that allowed them to keep an ice house. And after Nell disappeared, William Cropsey bought an exorbitant amount of ice. And it's believed that he was keeping Nell's body somewhere on ice to preserve her.
Oh my God.
That one would explain the appearance of her body after 37 days.
Yeah. And why, I mean, there's the thought of that letter.
Right, and why he wrote the fake letter.
But it was never proven it was him, right? Or was it?
They strongly thought it was. I don't know why they thought that.
Right.
The last theory was that a scheme was going on between Roy Crawford, Jim, Nell, and Nell's brother, who's also named William Jr., and that they were going to abduct Nell and ask for a ransom, but something went wrong. I don't believe that one because nobody ever asked for a ransom, and I don't know why Nell's not needing for anything, but that was one that came out. Here's something fascinating. Roy Crawford, the other man who had been in the house that night, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me that he did not encounter Jim Wilcox and Leonard Owens at that 11:40 time spot because he should have been walking by at that time.
Oh.
He didn't encounter them. Roy Crawford died by suicide in 1908.
What?
Yes. Now, in 1913, as Jim Wilcox was trying to ask for parole, William Jr. died by taking carbolic acid.
What?
Nell's brother. He left a wife and a 5-year-old who he named after his sister, Nell Cropsey. I mean, does it feel like they maybe know something?
Whoa. Jeez.
William Cropsey, the father, he died in 1938 from old age. Ollie never left the house, the sister.
Right. What about her? Like
she never left the house
again. She didn't go looking for her, remember? And she was with Roy.
She became a complete shut-in and was talked about around town as, you know, being a weird old lady. She died in 1944.
Wow.
What's interesting to me is William died in 1938. He was buried in one cemetery in town. Ollie died in 1944. She was buried in another. Mrs. Cropsey died a few years later, also buried in the same cemetery as Ollie. It would appear that the Cropseys buried their father in a completely different cemetery than the rest of the family.
Even, like, is it a male-female thing?
No.
Huh.
That, to me, was interesting because if you believe the first story that William Cropsey accidentally killed Nell.
He really, remember, he did things like let them hang out without a chaperone. Like, what if he really needed them to get married or something and then, like, lost his temper?
I don't know why he would. I think the Cropseys were doing fine. I think it's possible that Nell was outside and got in a fight with her father, or was meeting with John Fearing, or they did think there was a thief on the property. Maybe what Ollie said she told her father to be careful of actually is what happened. Like there was maybe a little bit of truth.
But she wasn't shot.
No, I think she was hit in the well, I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't know how scientific the autopsies were at that point. I feel like nowadays you would be able to tell if a body had been put on ice for weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something they were looking for. Was she shot, or did a bullet just graze her temple? Like, was it ricochet? Like, did something just happen to hit her in the head?
Yeah.
I don't know, and I wonder if maybe she didn't die right away, and maybe they kept her upstairs and they created all these false stories blaming Jim Wilcox because they thought eventually Nell would get better and they'd just make up a story that she showed up. Or maybe they were starting to make up these stories, or did she die instantly? And then they
God.
thought they'd pin it on Wilcox.
That's crazy. I keep thinking about Leonard and Dracula, though, if they had anything to do with this.
Leonard Owens?
Yeah.
Why would he? He was just the guy walking home from work.
Because didn't he walk by the house
No.
after Jim, talking to Jim? Oh, he didn't go all the way.
No. It's like out of the way. Like he was just
Got it.
walking from the Cropseys to his house and they encountered each other.
Okay.
He's just a random witness. I think Roy Crawford and the father are more suspicious.
But what is the...
The author who I mentioned before, William Dunstan, he actually held a proper funeral for Jim Wilcox recently because he never was given one.
That's really kind.
With like a proper headstone, and he actually wrote an obituary and had it printed in the paper.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So, and today, the Cropsey house at Seven Pines, which is in 1901 Riverside Drive, is said to be haunted. So people who've lived in that house since then, lights go on and off, water fills the sink, doors open and close, and people from the street have often seen a gauzy, pale woman standing in the window looking out.
It's all BS to make me scared.
Sorry. But anyway, so what do you think happened? Do you think Jim Wilcox did it?
No, but it's the most likely that he did, but I don't think he did it. I mean, he was the last person to see her. I don't know. It just feels weird.
Yeah, the biggest thing to me is that the condition of her body after 37 days. I think to be as perfectly preserved as it was reported, she would have to have been kept somewhere where that was possible. So she would had to have been somewhere where the temperature and the elements were not near her. So I don't think if Jim had done it, he wouldn't have thrown her right in the river. Where's he going to keep her? He wouldn't be able to keep her somewhere where somebody else wouldn't find her. But if the Cropseys did it, and again, I think they probably did it by accident, then the whole family would have known. And the whole family seemed to unravel after this.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because like they could unravel just because of her death. But I'm trying to think. I mean, so it's late fall, winter in North Carolina. It's
November.
It's not going to be cold enough to preserve a body if they kept it outside, though, because it's only North Carolina. It's not in the mountains either.
Right. It's not going to be cold enough. That's the fact that he bought a ton of ice the day.
Was there a party? Like, could they try to connect that to something?
I doubt you would have a party the day after your daughter went missing.
Oh, it was the day after. Shit.
Yeah.
That's weird. Unless it's something with farming that we're not putting together.
He'd never bought that amount before.
Dude.
But, I mean, maybe. I would love to have known more about that. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Wow.
But after 37 days, she should, like you said, she would be unrecognizable after being in a river.
It would be awful. Somebody, no, she was not put right in the river. There's no way.
So either she was kept alive and held hostage for a while. Right. That's another possibility, I guess.
Because they couldn't figure out time of death back then, right?
I think they just assumed it was when she disappeared.
Got it.
But I don't know if they could tell at that point. So either she was kept somewhere alive for a while or she was kept preserved. And I don't think Jim would have had the time to do either of those two things. And then I also don't think he would have been able to go home, hang up his clothes, which were undisturbed. They had a boarder in the house who saw those clothes. They weren't wet. They weren't dirty. And then he just went to sleep and was undisturbed, which went to bed. He wasn't late. He wasn't rushing. You'd think there'd be something.
Is it common knowledge that body decomposition, like would somebody know that putting somebody on ice would keep their body longer?
I think that you would.
Maybe as a farmer.
Well, that's how you would preserve livestock.
Yeah.
After you butchered it, but also I mean there are morgues at that point.
Okay.
And so if you were preparing somebody for their funeral, that's why I wonder if she didn't die right away. The theory that maybe they kept her upstairs hoping that she'd recover.
So they never really searched the house, though.
I know, isn't that
'Cause they had
crazy?
no
The
thought to do
investigation,
it.
so different. They just brought Jim to the house and yelled at him. It would have been great if they'd searched the
Yeah.
entire house and all the
Why
outbuildings.
not?
I imagine they thought if they did search the house, they probably allowed one of the family members to search the house. So it would have been easy for Mr. Cropsey to say, nope, she's not up here, if she was. But I don't know. She also could have been
No,
this.
the cops should.
This could have been a random person.
Yeah.
It seems unlikely, but it could have been. It could have been a random person who maybe Nell just walked to the pier because she was upset or
Yeah.
something, and she did encounter some
Right.
really terrible, evil person. That's possible too.
Wow.
But it's just sad the way that they pick apart a woman like Nell and believe she deserves justice because they've reconciled that she is a beautiful, pure woman.
No, like, it doesn't matter.
I know, it doesn't matter. If she was pregnant, she deserves justice. If she'd had sex, she deserves justice. If she was a mistress to Fairie, she deserves justice.
Yeah. You doinks.
Like, we don't know. And she never was allowed, she was so young, she never was allowed to become anything else.
Yeah.
And Jim Wilcox, his life was ruined.
Oh, yeah. Ruined.
I have a hard time believing he did it, but there you are.
I know. I like it. It makes sense based on the facts, but it doesn't feel like it.
But it doesn't really make sense to me based on the facts because I don't think he had time. And the fact that if he had been the one to do it, I really do think she would have instantly been in the water.
Jeez.
Yeah. So do you have any last words?
I mean, we've seen this with Boo Radley, and you see it again. Don't just jump to conclusions. Gotta follow the law as much as you can to try to investigate and see what really happened.
You love Atticus Finch.
I do. What a stunner.
What?
He's a good-looking guy.
What'd you call him? A what?
A stunner.
Oh, they said a sinner.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
I know you love Gregory Peck. We've been over this. Gregory Peck and Harrison Ford. Look out. All right. Well, and who should listen today?
Oh, boy. Judges, people on the jury, siblings, fathers, let's see, neighbors, and policemen and women who are investigating a crime. Search the fucking house.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can find us on all the platforms.
Wait, but what do you think? Who do you think did it to our listeners? You can tell us on our social medias at Tea Time Crimes.
Okay, she just jumped in on that segment, which I was doing. Yeah, that's where you can find us on all the platforms. And you can email us at
teatimecrimes@gmail.com.
And then rate, review, like, subscribe, send us recommendations for teas and crimes. You got anything else to say, Alana?
No.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you think of this case and who you think did it.
Who done it?
And we'll link in the source notes the book that I'm referring to. The author actually has a second one out that is a nonfiction novel from the point of view of Jim Wilcox.
Whoa.
He strongly believes that Wilcox is innocent, obviously.
Yeah.
All right, we're out. We'll be back next week, God willing. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.